We're beginning our adventure into understanding how microeconomics works. An economist like myself, if you looked up the dictionary definition, it says an economist is someone who studies the allocation of scarce goods and services. That's a pretty good definition of it. The key word in that definition is this word, scarcity. Scarcity means a lot of, just lots of different meanings for lots of different people. But for us, the best way to think about scarcity is that there's not enough to go around. That we have lots and lots and lots of people, demanders, consumers who want things, and we just don't have enough to give everybody all they want of everything. It's pretty simple when you think about some products. It's not possible, even though you may be a great lover of art, it's not possible for all of us to have an original Mona Lisa on our wall at our house or apartment. See, there's really only one of them. So that's a really scarce commodity. There may be only a couple hundred bottles of a certain great vintage of French wine. Well, still, with only 200, again, there's not a lot to go around, and you're going to have some mechanism to make that allocation decision. So what we're going to say is that the implication of scarcity, where scarcity is not enough to go around, the implication of that is that we need some form of resource allocation mechanism. That's what we're going to study. We're going to think about some form of resource allocation mechanism. Now, through the vast history of recorded time, that allocation mechanism was basically the king, the emperor, the strongest person, okay? The king would decide whether you actually were going to have sheep or whether you were going to work in the army or what you were going to do, and the king would make sure you had food and shelter and sustenance to get along. Today, if you think about contemporary societies, remember, this is a problem society has to solve. If there's not enough to go around, somebody's got to make the call. Who decides who gets what? Well, for us today, what we say Western economies, contemporary Western economies, use markets and prices. We take markets as a place where buyers and sellers come to this market. It doesn't have to be a physical space. It could be online. It could be over telephone lines. It could be all sorts of different versions. But what buyers and sellers get together, and they end up finding an allocation mechanism that comes from these things. To an economist, prices are nothing other than rationing devices. You know, I know you don't think that. Non-economists say, no, prices are pains. I don't like high prices. I don't like any prices. Why don't products be free? Well, products could be free, I suppose, but that would, as we said, we just don't have enough to go around in allocating these. Prices, to an economist, move up or down depending on scarcity. If there's only one of a certain type of painting, you see these most recent auctions at Sotheby's where they finally passed the 100 million mark for a single painting, okay? Well, that's a price in a market. There's only one, so there's not a lot of suppliers, but prices every single day. At boards of trade, for example, the corn price moves up or down depending on buyers and sellers who wade into that market. That price moves up or down to reflect relative scarcity. So I'm going to give you a little example of this, real-world example of this. I got something here with me right now. It's old, yellowed, beat-up news clipping. Now, you should always be nervous if a professor digs out some old, yellow, beat-up clipping, because it's sort of something, it maybe indicates that he or she hasn't updated their lectures in the last, 20 years. But in this case, I want this because it's really important. It's sort of time-stamped, a little credibility here. This is a page from a 1990 version of something called InfoWorld. 25 years ago, this came out. And I want to think about a particular story, which you can't read, but I'll read it for you. Down here it says, vendors beat Compaq to RAM punch. The story is about memory upgrades. And the subtitle says, third-party manufacturers offer low-cost SIMs and expansion boards. So the gist of the story is that back in 1990, third-party manufacturers were bringing out cheap memory for your PCs. Well, the interesting part is they actually have the prices here. Now remember, these are third-party vendors who are offering low-cost alternatives, according to the headline. And if you look at the price for a 4 megabyte chip, now remember I said megabyte, not gigabyte, a 4 megabyte chip, they give these away in Cracker Jack boxes these days, $2,599, almost $2,600 for this 4 megabyte chip. They go on and say if you really want to be a big spender and have a 16 megabyte chip, the price for that, $6,597. Now, you can go out. It's pretty easy. Before I did this lecture, I did a little search on the web, and I found an online dealer called Newegg that you could get a 512 megabyte chip. Now, the smallest one I could find was 512 megabyte, which is 128 times the size of this, and it's going for $6.97. $6.97 today for something that you spent $2,600 for 25 years ago. How does that happen? Well, that's really what this course is about, is thinking about how that happens. What happened in that market was that those high prices was a signal to producers, entrepreneurs, to say, hey, look, you can make a fortune just by taking silicon, etching out a few patterns on it, and selling it. These prices are really quite high. And so what happened is you saw people flood to this area that we now know as Silicon Valley, around the Stanford campus, and that built these empires around chips. Okay? And as a result of all of these people coming in and building these chips, the supply pushed prices down because the scarcity was just basically going away. And so today that's $6.97. Now, as I said, in our Western economies, we like to say we use markets and prices. We don't always use markets and prices. Sometimes it's sort of difficult to use prices. Sometimes it's just difficult because of the nature of the product. So if you were to go to Great America, for example, you got to stand in line. Now, me, when I go to Great America, I don't want to stand in line. I want to go to the scarcest place of all, which is the front of the line. Well, they figured that out. You can actually now buy the front of the line. Okay, it's scarce, but they use a market system of prices to find out how much you are willing to pay, and you can go to the front of the line. Another one of the economists' favorite examples, it gets written up on the front page of the USA Today. NBC Nightly News had a story about it a couple of years ago. It's a place called Krzyzewskiville. Now, Coach K, his name is Mike Krzyzewski, is the basketball coach for Duke University. Now, Duke has a very good basketball team. They're always quite competitive, sometimes making it to the Final Four quite frequently. And they play in a very small arena, perhaps the smallest of the Division I arenas. Cameron Indoor is a really small place. And so there's just a little bitty section allocated to the students. The university administrators said, students don't buy tickets. This is their team. So you don't buy a ticket, you just walk up with your ID and you can go in and set. But they only let enough people in for that section. Okay? They feel that they don't really want to price that ticket because they don't want to sell tickets because then they have to set a price and you're already paying it in your tuition. Well, as you can imagine, there are a lot more students who want to go watch the Duke game than there are seats in the student section. Especially true when they pay their arch rival UNC, which is the University of North Carolina, is just across town. And they're also quite competitive in basketball, so it's a very big game. So people have started to line up in what we call queuing theory. They stay outside early, and I mean early. They start putting tents up months before the game for the North Carolina game. Months before the game, that's right, with an S. They actually have a structured rules that you can go out to the website and look. It's called Krzyzewskiville. So this little village of tents is named after the coach. And Krzyzewskiville has a series of rules about what you have to do with your tent, how many people can be in a tent. You can have 12 people. You and 11 of your friends can sit together and get in at the same time. During the day, only 2 people have to be in the tent. At night, as many as 10 people have to be in the tent. And it's monitored by university security so that you play by the rules. They use this system as an allocation mechanism. So here you got these students who literally are waiting months outside in February weather. It's not so bad in North Carolina, but on the other hand, they are supposed to be students, right? They're sleeping outside for months to get into this game. Well, That is an allocation mechanism. It seems to be pretty inefficient, but the university just doesn't want to use price, and the students have responded in the only way they know how to make that allocation mechanism: who's going to get first in line for those limited seats.